Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on this beautiful planet of ours. Welcome to a very special World Oceans Day conversation, Blueprints for Coastal Adaptation. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe of Earth911 and Intentional Futures, and we're going to be joined today by 9 experts working at the cutting edge of biodiversity restoration, climate mitigation, and financial engineering about how to construct a blue economy that preserves the rich ecosystems at the boundary of land and sea. We're going to start with an introduction to the challenge from ocean advocate Ashlyn Cousteau of Earth Echo International and Boise. And she's going to explain the coastal biodiversity crisis. And then we're going to be followed by 2 roundtables talking about various aspects of coastal adaptation. And finally, we're going to talk about how you can support this with your investments as well as profit from the opportunity that the blue economy represents. Before we begin, I'd like to bring on Doug Heskey. He's the instigator of this conversation today and CEO of New Day Impact Investing. Hi, Doug. How are you doing?
I am doing very well, Mitch. And once again, it's such a pleasure hosting these events with you. Good
Well, thank
afternoon, everybody. I am beaming in from Park City, Utah today. We are only 2 days away from World Oceans Day. The purpose: to raise awareness and collective action for a healthy ocean and stable climate. 2024 is expected to be an above normal hurricane season, with NOAA forecasting now a range of 17 to 25 total named storms. Our coastlines are bearing the brunt of many of the most damaging effects of climate change, whether it be higher sea levels, warmer oceans, and intensifying storms are hitting coastal communities and ecosystems very, very hard, causing economic hardship and ecological havoc. Pollution, overfishing, irresponsible development are all compounding the damage wrought by climate change, creating an interconnected web of stress on coastal environments and populations. This challenge, needless to say, is immense. But there are solutions to restore the natural infrastructure to protect these communities, to foster wildlife, and sequester carbon that can be solved with innovation, capital deployment, and behavioral changes. This past Saturday, I returned from the United Nations Small Island Development Stakes convening in the Caribbean, which is held once a decade. I was there with Dave Randall and some of our other members like Carter Henning that have joined the team today. And I was really struck by a number of things. Number one, some countries are already preparing to relocate from lands that are expected to be underwater in the coming decades. Countries like the Seychelles are imposing restrictions on the number of tourists that visit to proactively preserve their coastal habitats. Youth communities and indigenous populations are activating, taking more responsibility for finding solutions to many of the problems that we, not them, have created. And most distressingly, the blue economy is massively underfunded to the tune of $150 billion each year, according to the World Economic Forum. So, this is why World Oceans Day is important. And we must find a better way to bridge the chasm between education and action. I am extraordinarily pleased that we've been able to gather a group of global leaders that are doing deep impact work tied to coastal restoration and resilience, one of the lead impact issues at New Day that we focus on, and that our Ocean Health Exchange Traded Fund, AHOY, supports. This group will be led by my friend Ashlyn Cousteau, who, with her husband Philippe Cousteau, have been tireless leaders, change makers, and partners of New Day within the ocean health space. So without further ado, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Ashlyn Cousteau, and wanted to express all of our thanks from everybody at New Day for joining today's session.
Oh, Doug, thank you so much. You are an amazing partner and a dear friend. Thank you to everybody at New Day. Thank you to Mitch at Earth911 for having us here. Let's start with the ocean. What have you done for us lately? I know many of you on this call are intimately familiar with how important our ocean is to us, but I also just want to level set in case there's some newbies on the call with us. So, if you like to breathe air, we can thank the ocean. It produces over 50% of the air that we breathe. If you like to eat food, we can thank the ocean. Not only does the ocean provide about 3 billion people around the planet with ocean based protein, but also about 75% of the water that feeds our crops originates from the ocean. And really, if you think about it, every single raindrop really does start in the ocean. Also, we all know our climate is, how should I say it, not in a good place these days. But a lot of times people forget the link between climate and the ocean. And the link couldn't be larger because it is our ocean that controls not only our climate, but also our weather. So we cannot talk about saving the climate crisis without talking about a healthy ocean. Now, as we all know, the United Nations and the SDG goals are an incredible benchmark for humanity to really try to help ourselves stave off the worst of the climate crisis. But SDG 14, interestingly, 14, life underwater, is actually one of the SDGs that you can see threaded throughout all of the other SDGs. And sadly, it is the least invested in. In 2019, $2.3 billion went into SDG 14, where $37.7 billion went into SDG 9. Now, that is for industry, innovation, and infrastructure, and it is the most healthily funded SDG. But again, you can just see that there is a huge discrepancy here, and SDG 14 remains the least funded, even though, as I said, when you look at anything from poverty to food security to social equality to education to, I mean, it all really has the through line, the through thread on all of those is the ocean. Because again, the ocean is the heartbeat of our planet. It is what gives us air, food, and is really helping us with the climate crisis. Our ocean has absorbed 90% of the excess heat that we have put into our ocean. So really, our ocean is our biggest ally when it also comes to fighting climate change. Now, I also recognize that the purpose of this talk is kind of twofold. We have to talk about the importance of coastal resilience, and we also, again, have to talk about the lack of funding for these projects. Many people talk about sustainability, and for me, my favorite thing to say is, fuck sustainability. We don't need to sustain. We cannot sustain the planet the way that it is. We have to think about restoration and regeneration. That's what's so exciting about some of the large goals like 30 by 30, which is the goal to protect 30% of land and sea by 2030 to help us stave off some of the largest impacts of climate change. Right now, only about 6%, I think we're getting closer to 7% of our ocean is fully protected. And that's scary. That is a really, really scary number. So some other numbers that I wanted to talk to you all about, and I had to write them down, by the way, everyone, full disclosure, because I wanted to really nail home the importance of this. Okay, when we talk about carbon sequestration, right? Fun fact, the carbon sequestration of a whale, a single whale, is approximately worth $3 million. Just the carbon sequestration of the whale. Seagrasses, as an ecosystem, provide the carbon capture services worth about $2.3 trillion annually, and they can sequester carbon 35 times faster than a rainforest. I love trees, but we must start thinking more about our ocean ecosystems and not just our terrestrial systems. Coral reefs, which you're going to hear more about as well, provide the U.S. with the resources and services directly worth $375 billion annually and $11.9 trillion annually through the protection of our coastal cities, our fisheries, and jobs. And just in tourism, coral reefs, healthy coral reefs, represent $36 billion a year. You know, all in all, if our ocean was a country, its measurable GDP would rival France at 2.5 trillion US dollars. And I personally think that the ocean should have its own seat at the G7 summit. That is not even compared to our ocean's natural capital alone. Are you all ready for this? Is valued at $24 trillion. And that is just what we can measure. Our ocean is an incredible life source. As Doug mentioned, it is facing huge issues, everything from pollution in the forms of plastic pollution, urban runoff, chemical pollution, fisheries. As you all know, 90% of our fisheries are either fished to capacity or they are overfished. And as I said before, about 3 billion people worldwide rely on the ocean as their main source of protein. You know, when we think of national security, we have to think about our ocean and ocean health, clean drinking water, food. I mean, truly, our ocean is our lifeline, our life source, and technically our life raft. When you also look at the hope and the opportunity that our ocean can provide via helping us with in the face of the climate crisis, in the face of food scarcity, migration. I mean, all these things. Truly, our ocean is at the root of all of this. That is why I'm so excited that you all are here to truly put the ocean in the center stage of all of our talks. That's where it needs to be. And again, I will say this, I can't say it enough. We cannot solve the climate crisis without having a healthy ocean. I have one more thing to say before we kick it off to our incredible group of experts that are here joining us. But, you know, as humans, we just kind of need to look at what we're doing and stop doing dumb things. One of those dumb things is the largest climate catastrophe that no one knows about. And it is taking place down in the Southern Ocean. There is an incredible ecosystem down there. And it's the relationship between krill and whales and phytoplankton. It is the producer of an incredible amount of available oxygen. It is our largest carbon sink on our planet. And right now, humans are going down there and scooping up as much krill as they possibly can to come back. Mostly 70% of the market value for krill that are fished out of Antarctica are coming to North America for nutraceuticals, specifically omega-3s. And the kicker for that, not only are we undermining the food source of almost every species down in Antarctica, as I said, the largest carbon sink on our planet and a producer of a major part of our oxygen, there's no reason to do that because krill, like fish, don't produce their own omega-3s. They get it by eating algae. So it's just one of those things where humans can do better. We should expect better. And I'm really excited for you all to hear about the restorative practices that are taking place. Today is not about doom and gloom, even though I'm sorry, I did get a little gloomy there. Today is about positivity, about hope, about opportunity. And I am so excited to share the stage with our speakers. And again, I want everybody to remember we cannot sustain the planet the way it is. We must restore it. And the best way to do that is to look at our coastal ecosystems from coral reefs, seagrasses, mangroves. I'm really just excited for you all to hear. So thank you for being here. Thank you for helping me kick off my favorite day of the year, World Ocean Day. And I can't wait to hear more.
Thanks, Ashlyn, very much. Can I ask you a question before we jump to the next group? And that is, you and Philippe have been doing this for many years. And you've also taken an entrepreneurial approach to this. And I'm wondering, as you look at the oceans, is this the platform for a sustainable and restorative economy? Can we actually do this?
Yes, we can. You know, so many times people have been looking to nonprofits, to NGOs to fix these problems. And yes, we need nonprofits and we need NGOs, but we also need business.
Mhm.
And when people start realizing that there is money to be made and you can make money and do the right thing for the planet, that's really when we're going to see huge change. What we really need to do is take some of the solutions that you all are going to hear about. Like at Voyacy, we really look at coral restoration, seagrass, and mangroves as well. And we need to get it to scale. So it's about taking these solutions, getting them to scale, and that is what's so exciting. And when we show that it is profitable to do that, that is really when we're going to see a huge uptake happen. And really, I feel like the crescendo that's going to take place for our planet.
Thank you. Because this is going to grow as an economy from the ground up. And these are going to start in the communities that we're going to be talking to later. But Ashlyn, thank you so much. Let's turn to the next group. We're going to put you on hold, but if you can join us in the conversation later, we'd love it.
Thanks, Mitch.
Our first panel, we're going to look at the kind of higher level issues from the government perspective, from the perspective of a particular issue, and that is the loss of the kelp forests on the Pacific coast. And then finally, the role that plastic plays in the environment and the damage in the environment. We're going to start off with Maria Brown. Maria is the superintendent of Greater Farallones and Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuaries for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Maria, why don't you tell us about your work? I will be running the slides for you as you do.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm so excited to be here today. This is a great subject, and I'm going to focus a little bit on the positive and also about what we can do to continue that positive. So, first off, what is my job? My job is to help save the spectacular. Isn't that a fantastic job to have? I work for the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries. Go to the next slide. So the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, that they protect our nation's most significant marine areas. It is done through the National Marine Sanctuaries Act, which is our nation's most significant marine conservation legislation that we have. We have 15 national marine sanctuaries across the U.S. and in U.S. waters, so extending all the way out to American Samoa. We just recently announced yesterday a soon-to-be a 16th marine sanctuary in Lake Ontario. We manage 2 national marine monuments, and this is, again, all with the purpose of conserving our nation's most significant marine environments and to serve as beacons of hope for our present and future generations. So a little bit about me. As was mentioned, I come from the San Francisco Bay Area. I manage 5,600 square miles of protected waters off north central California. So this is equivalent in size to combining Yosemite and the Grand Canyon National Parks. So this gives you a sense of the scale of some of these marine protected areas. Our mission is to conserve the biologically diverse and globally significant ocean environment off north central California. And I'm here to tell you that we can be successful in bringing back wildlife and in restoring marine habitats. We have successfully brought back harbor seal populations, elephant seal populations, northern fur seal populations, white sharks, and seabirds where they were once lost. Some of these species were at the brink of extinction. Where we are now is we're looking at taking what we've learned from bringing back these species and applying that to habitats. And you're going to hear a lot more about kelp. Kelp is the unsung hero of our oceans. It generates oxygen. It's also important for sequestering carbon that then gets stored into our deep ocean environment. It supports a multi-million-dollar tourist industry through recreational diving, hotels, campsites, restaurants, and stores. It also supports million-dollar commercial fishing economies. And overall, it supports a healthy ecosystem function. So if we're going to have otters, if we're going to have fish, we're going to need to have kelp. And unfortunately, the sad story is, along the north central California coast, we've lost over 90% of our kelp forests. And I'm just going to leave it there because Natasha's going to share what we're seeing along our coast and what action is being taken to bring it back. So what else? I'm going to just do 2 more slides. What else are we working on? We're working on saving the spectacular deep ocean environment, something that many people don't know we have throughout the U.S. waters. It's not only those warm coral reefs. This is off of San Francisco, this image. We have spectacular deep, cold coral waters, corals that you can see the fish. We need them to support our fish. As you heard, we are losing our fish in the ocean. We need to have healthy habitat to support this fish. This is a brand new restoration activity. We are learning brand new technology. How can we restore these deep sea corals that have been damaged? And then lastly, I want to share another important restoration activity we are embarking on. So if you can go to the next slide. We're looking at restoring and protecting endangered and threatened whales. I'm sure you've heard that whales need to be protected. Yes, they do. They were once harvested for their oil. Well, now we are seeing them being hit by ships. Ships striking endangered and threatened whales along both the East Coast and West Coast of the United States is a critical issue. We may lose some species forever if we don't address this problem. So we're actively addressing how can we slow ships down and working with the shipping industry on this so that whales can survive, so whale populations can recover. And how does this benefit us as people? We've heard, people love to go out whale watching and see a whale. So yes, it supports local tourist economies. It also supports healthy ocean function. We have to have whales because of the carbon cycle. They eat fish and then they go poop. And that fertilizes the ocean and allows us to have more fish in the ocean. So we have to have whales. Also, as you heard from Ashlyn, they contribute to mitigating carbon. They are very large animals that store a lot of carbon in their body. And when they die and sink to the seafloor, that carbon is sequestered in the deep sea. And if you think about it, that's where we have thousands of years of carbon stored in the deep sea. So I just want to end with, why is it critical to the health of the ocean that we restore habitats and species? They protect our shores from sea level rise, extreme storm events, hurricanes. The ocean feeds our families. It supports our communities through jobs, recreation, and spiritual connection to our world, and is linked ultimately to our health as humans. So thank you again for joining us today, and I am looking forward to hearing Natasha go more in depth into the kelp issue.
Thank you. And so now we're going to bring on Natasha Benjamin. She's a filmmaker and has a film in production called Sequoias of the Sea. Take it away, Natasha.
Thank you so much, Mitch. Happy World Oceans Day. Thrilled to be here. Thank you, Maria, for setting it all up. So my name is Natasha Benjamin. I'm a marine scientist. I'm a filmmaker. I'm also the associate director of Blue Frontier. And I've been working in ocean conservation for the last 20 years. Living in Northern California, my backyard is the Pacific Ocean here. And over the last 20 years, I've seen the changes in the ocean in a pretty short time frame. As a diver and a surfer who spent a lot of time in the water, I watched our kelp ecosystem that Maria was talking about basically disappear. Like she said, we've lost almost 95% of kelp forests along the Northern California coast. Most people don't know about this story and don't even really know why we should care about kelp. So over the last few years, I have been working with my partner, Anna Blanco, documenting the story of the kelp forest and what's happened. We have focused the story on Fort Bragg, which is the Mendocino and Sonoma coast, is the epicenter of this collapse of this kelp forest. And we're going to show a short clip of the film and the story of really a community that has been impacted by a climate emergency and how this community is changing the way it's been based on resource dependence and now shifting to a new blue economy and using different forms within their community to use the ocean to not only build resilience, but regenerative farming, aquaculture, and shift with our changing ocean. So I'm very excited to show a short clip.
A few years ago, these kelp forests stretched all up and down the Northern California coast, but they have been decimated. They are known as the redwoods of the ocean, and this is one of the last patches left.
This destruction that's occurring is worse than the fire that burned down my house and 10,000 other homes in Sonoma County.
How we would feel if we lost 96% of the big trees in the Sierra, that would be devastating to us. That would be front page news every day.
The decline in the kelp has impacted, of course, our ability to gather abalone. Not being able to fish, not being able to, gather takes away our identity as a Pomo, as a tribal person.
Without kelp in the ecosystem, it's made it really hard as a commercial diver.
Kelp covers roughly a quarter of the Earth's coastline, and they grow up to 2 feet per day. They're one of the fastest growing organisms in the world. Everything in the ocean circles around this ecosystem. All the fish, all the marine mammals, all the invertebrates, all of them are here because of the kelp forest.
We've had a few beds come back over the last year or two, but maybe 5% of what we had. For my daughter, it touches hard because she was actually born at the spur of this whole disaster.
My name is Grant Downey. I am a California commercial sea urchin diver. Our red urchin fishery on the Northern California coast has been declared a disaster federally 4 years now.
Losing 96% of an ecosystem mostly hidden beneath the waves can be difficult to visualize. In 2015, most of it vanishes and then never recovers. But the kelp didn't just disappear. It's been devoured by purple urchin, their natural predator. The sunflower sea star was wiped out in 2013 by a pathogen.
And are you seeing any return of starfish that is noticeable to help address this?
So, not to toot my own horn, but I have found the only 2 Pycnopodia sunflower stars that have been seen on our coast.
Well, we need them.
I found the one sunflower star, and that was amazing. Obviously, from my video, I'm like screaming underwater.
We're all interested in finding the best way to restore kelp forests, and I think that's really what brought Grant and I together. I try to integrate where I'm at in my personal life too with where we need to go for kelp to make this ecosystem actually healthy again for him and for all of us. And it's definitely humbled me quite a bit to have this experience paired with an environmental catastrophe.
Scientists think bringing sea otters back, those little guys, may be one solution.
What are the chances that the reintroduction area is going to be where that kelp's going to emerge that needs help?
Good question. I mean, it's a crapshoot, but they're not going to be a magical solution. They're not going to transform the entire North Coast back into a kelp bed anytime soon.
They're cute. We all love them, but we don't want them to strip mine, and let me repeat the term, strip mine the rest of the coast.
That was a long meeting. It was almost like a wake. Without food or drinks, it was like a wake. The end to the North Coast if it were to really happen.
Thank you, Natasha. That was powerful. Is the North Coast at the end?
No, not yet. But things are changing. And I think the real question is what it means to restore an ecosystem. And what I'm understanding and what the scientists and researchers are saying is that we're probably not going to see that lush kelp forest that we knew as divers and scientists and researchers back in our lifetime. But what is this new future going to look like? How are these communities going to survive? And that's what this story is about, is the fishermen and the scientists and the tribes and the researchers working together to restore an ecosystem and develop a system moving forward to have a partnership with our ocean.
Well, let's hear it from our final speaker in the group. We're going to have a question and answer after this, but Christopher Chen is the founder and executive director of the Center for Oceanic Awareness, Research, and Education. Chris, tell us about your work and particularly the role of plastic in the seas.
Thank you and hello all. We're thrilled to be part of this panel and amidst such great company. CORE is involved in more obvious restoration and resilience efforts like climate change and 30 by 30. But today I'd like to talk about an insidious threat and a barrier to restoration, resilience, and recovery efforts. Next slide, please. Plastic pollution is literally everywhere. It's in the food that we eat, the water we drink, and in the very air that we breathe. There isn't a single cubic centimeter of water on Earth that does not contain plastic. It's important to keep in mind that the problem with plastic isn't just what happens after we use a thing and its end of life. It's in the life cycle of plastic. The effects of plastic pollution are far-reaching, and the full life cycle of plastic exacerbates climate change, is an affront to environmental justice, and is harmful to human health. Okay, that last bit is putting it mildly. People are literally dying. The full life cycle of plastic impedes every one of the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And as noted by the UN Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights, is a threat to every single human right, not just the right to a healthy environment. Next, please. We realize that in addition to local, national, and regional support, this was a global issue requiring global approach. In 2017, CORE was invited to address the first United Nations Ocean Conference, and it was there that we, speaking on behalf of numerous NGOs and rights holders, were among the first to publicly call for a global collaboration to fight plastic pollution. I'll be honest, the early years were a challenge. Many people laughed at the idea of a global treaty on plastic, and industry collaborated with some governments to squash and avoid the very idea. It was in this space that CORE dove into the area of international agreements. Next slide, please. I mentioned earlier that CORE embraces 30 by 30, and we poured a lot into the High Seas Treaty, more formally called Beyond the Borders of National Jurisdiction. The BBN Treaty isn't just about the high seas, though, and I could go on and on about how that impacts this topic as well. But back to plastics. As public awareness of plastic pollution continued to increase, it became too embarrassing for countries and even industry to resist the idea of a treaty. And it was at the 5th United Nations Environment Assembly in 2022 that it was unanimously agreed that the world needed to create and adopt a global treaty to end plastic pollution by addressing the full life cycle of plastic. At the close of that meeting, I had the honor of addressing the body on behalf of all civil society, and I'd like to repeat one particularly relevant quote. We can no longer continue to put profit before planet. We can no longer continue to put profit before people. No one's convenience and no one's paycheck is more important than the health and resilience of our environment. Next slide, please. So now that the petrochemical industry and oil producing nations are technically in support of a treaty, their strategy has changed. They continue to undermine and delay the process, and at every step, they attempt to weaken any language and strip the agreement of any efficacy. Some things are extremely clear. We cannot recycle our way out of this problem. We also need to be aware of and to avoid false solutions. As you learn more about this, you'll likely hear terms like waste to energy, advanced recycling, and chemical recycling. These are just fancy ways to greenwash incineration. And even if we embraced that and burnt everything and ignored the inherent hazards, it could still not keep up with the runaway production of plastic. One popularized definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, yet expecting different results. This treaty must address the full life cycle of plastic, and we must reduce the plastics being produced. I'll end with that, and I'll encourage you to reach out to learn more or to join us.
Thank you, Christopher. Now, let's turn to a set of questions. And folks, if you are listening and would like to ask a question, I'll be watching the thread there and can pass along those questions. But I want to start off with you, Maria. NOAA is probably the best funded governmental organization on the planet addressing the environment. But tell us about the actual contours of the funding for NOAA and support for coastal restoration and ocean health.
Well, as Ashlyn said, if you look at the funding that goes to oceans compared to the funding that goes to land conservation, it's minuscule. It's a very small percent compared to what we invest on land. Although the ocean is 70% of our Earth. So in terms of funding for ocean conservation, ocean protection, ocean restoration, it's a drop in the bucket to what we spend on land.
What do we need? How much should we be spending as a nation or as a planet on ocean health?
Well, given my position, I can't really answer that question, how much we need. But what I can say is that it needs to be a public-private partnership. We're not going to be able to do this. The federal government is not going to be able to do this alone. We must work together. We must work with industry, businesses, nonprofits, and citizens and community members to work towards restoration. And we can. We've done it before. Like I mentioned in the very beginning, we know we can be successful. It just takes a will. If there's a will to restore our ocean habitats and coastal ecosystems, there is a way. We can do it. I completely believe we can do it.
That will is being exercised right now in the global plastic treaty negotiations, Christopher. How are governments and private enterprise coming together to begin to turn off the tap on plastic? Is that a genuine movement at this point?
It's hard to say, because I think that there are many governments, I would say even most governments, want to reduce production and realize that this is something that really needs to be done. But there are some folks who would really like things to continue as is, or worse, they would rather see production continue to increase. So there are conflicts of interest in these processes because folks want to continue to keep their bottom line. They want to continue to make money at the detriment of the planet and of its inhabitants, both people and animals. And that's wherein the problem lies, because there are folks who really would like this just to all go away and continue to make money as if nobody really cared. So what really needs to happen is that all of the countries need to have those folks stand out, and the industry that wants to continue to usurp the environment for their own benefit, those need to be called out. There are folks who really want this to go the right way, and there are industries who see the light at the end of the tunnel and need to change. And that's the best we can hope for. And we really need everyone to help convince all of our governments to support the correct path.
Storytelling is going to be critical to our understanding, not just of the climate crisis, but the series, the waves of realizations about the impact of the industrial era on our planet and on our lives and the lives of our children and grandchildren. Natasha, as you think about how to tell the story that you are telling of the loss of 96% of the kelp along the Pacific coast, which is, it's as though all of our national parks burned to the ground, and there's just, a state park left. How can we also engage people in this, the restoration and the regrowth of the kelp forest and the coastal ecosystem? Is there have we really dedicated enough thinking and storytelling to where we can go?
That's a big question that I think we're all trying to tackle is how do we elevate these stories? How do we get what's happening in the ocean into people's consciousness? So there's an education and awareness piece that is critical, that we're all working on within all of our organizations. The Sanctuary has an amazing education program. We're trying to use film and media to tell these stories. Working at the policy level to educate people, like this has to happen on so many different fronts. But first, so there has to be education and awareness. There has to be the realization that we don't really have a choice here. Maria was saying, if there's a will, there's a way. If we don't change our behavior in kind of the carbon cycle and the impact that we're having on this planet, there will be no more kelp forests. There will be no more resources in the ocean, and that will have a direct impact on us. So we don't have a choice. We need to change our behavior. And the kelp story is a local story that's happening here in my backyard, but this is happening all over the world. And that's really what we're trying to show here. So I think it has to happen on education and outreach. The political will needs to be created. And then all of us as individuals need to think about our impact and the small changes that we can make and speak up and vote for the ocean.
A question from the chat, which is, and I'll direct it to you, Natasha, since you're covering the topic so carefully, is should we be making kelp farming and kelp business opportunities available to people, or should, I think the other gist of the question is, should we be cutting this off and protecting it as though it was a wilderness into which we shouldn't tread?
So the seaweed kelp world kind of has two worlds. We have our wild kelp and our wild seaweeds, which need protection, need restoration, and here in California are declining. And then there is the regenerative aquaculture and kelp and seaweed farming world. That's not really happening in California. It's happening in other places in the world, in New England and in Alaska. And that is an industry that I think has huge potential in terms of a food product, in terms of an environmentally sustainable system that we can provide a food product. And it also creating more, like Ashlyn said, these mangroves, seagrasses, seaweeds, and kelp sequester an enormous amount of carbon. So when we lose these ecosystems, we're losing that carbon sequestering potential as well. So there is a place for this. It can be confusing though, when we talk about wanting to protect a diminishing kelp forest, and then you go to the store and you see kelp chips.
Yeah.
So we need to educate people around wild kelp and farmed kelp, and there's a place for all of it.
Well, we certainly need more of that education. But Maria, let me ask you this question. What are the rules for engagement with private enterprise within the national marine sanctuaries? Is there a partnership emerging around those protected areas?
Yes, there's multiple partnerships in the marine protected areas. And in fact, that's the only way we're really able to get things done is through partnerships. We partner really closely with NGOs. For example, the Greater Fairlands National Marine Sanctuary partners very closely with the Greater Fairlands Association, a nonprofit that helps bring in private funding and to lead kelp restoration efforts. We also partner with our National Marine Sanctuary Foundation across the country, who works with businesses to bring resources to help restore, for example, corals in the Florida Keys. In Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary, they partner with local businesses throughout the gambit, from education to, for example, Viking Cruise Lines. They partner with them to do science in the sanctuary. So we partner with private industry on conducting the science, on educating youth, on educating adults. It's critical to our success in protecting and conserving and restoring the ocean is that we're doing it together. That's the only way we're going to be able to be successful.
Christopher, do you have a sense of our ability to clean up the plastics in the oceans? And is that part of the discussion going on around the treaty?
It's interesting that you ask because it is part of the discussion that's going on around the treaty, but it is something that I wish wasn't part of the discussion. Obviously, there's plastic out there that can and should be collected. Some of the larger pieces, because those will break down into smaller pieces. The problem is that it is over such a vast area and volume, frankly, because of the depth to which you find some of these materials, that it is literally impossible to collect it all without disturbing the existing flora and fauna that's there. More importantly, I and many of my colleagues believe that it is used as a distraction, because instead of focusing on what really needs to happen is to stop making so much freaking plastic, let's focus on cleaning it up. And we all know, we've all seen on Facebook and other media, oh, this Dutch kid has figured out how to clean up the ocean. And then basically people don't need to worry about what's really going on because somebody's taking care of it. A great analogy is if you have a sink that is overflowing, and this happens to me because I make tea and I have this kettle and I put it under the filter and I turn it on, and sometimes I get distracted. And I've literally had this pouring water all over my kitchen. I don't grab the mop. I don't start cleaning up the water that's pouring onto the floor. I turn off the tap first, and that is literally what we need to do. And it's great if you have some people that are turning off the tap and people that are cleaning things up, but we don't need a new mop. We don't need to design a new mop. We need to turn off the tap, and then we can focus on everything else.
That's such an important point. And as you think about the fact that everyone is waiting for someone else to solve the crisis, that really is the crisis in a nutshell. We each have to take this action and make the right decisions. I want to thank each of you for your participation in the conversation. It has been a great start to the outlook that we're trying to provide to the audience today. Before we go, I'm going to bring Ashlyn back on because there's a question in chat about being more specific about behaviors that individuals need to make in order to restore kelp forests, and you have kind of an unexpected answer.
It's a kind of a fun little fact, but as Chris was saying, we really do need to look at these problems this way, right? Where am I? This way, right? We need to make sure when we talk about protecting our kelp, we have to look at protecting coastline. We have to look at the marine protected areas. We have to look at stopping our plastic use and our fossil fuel use, because warming temperatures for our ocean is also killing the kelp. We have to think about what we put in our gardens and on our streets, because that urban runoff is also going in and killing the kelp. So it's really, it's big. You got to think big and go down little. But when you think of something too that every individual can do, when I found this out, I was floored. So as in Natasha's beautiful film, it talked about the sea otters. Sea otters are so important because sea otters eat the purple, oh my gosh, the purple
urchins.
Thank you, the purple urchins, because the purple urchins feed on the kelp. Well, one of the reasons, there was also hunting, because sea otters have the most hair follicles per square inch of any mammal on the planet. They're super cute and cuddly. Anyways, there was hunting going on back in the day, but also there was a disease that came out and wiped out a lot of our California sea otters. The scientists were able to link that disease back to cat poop. Now, how did cat poop get in the ocean? And it's because people didn't realize that by flushing the cat poop down our toilets from, let's say, the litter boxes, it was getting in our water supply. And when it went out to the ocean, the bacteria and the virus was still living in the cat poop, and it actually transferred to our sea otters and wiped out a big part of the population. So again, as Maria said, as Natasha said, as Chris said, we have to connect the dots. It's individual actions have huge consequences. Government actions have huge consequences, and business actions have huge consequences. But your fun fact for the day: if you want to save the kelp and the sea otters, don't flush your cat poop down the toilet.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm going to bring the next group on to the screen and the cat poop story. I didn't know toxoplasmosis was a problem in the sea, but here we learn something every day, don't we? Now we're going to turn to Carter. You are the managing biologist at Sea and Shoreline, which is a Florida-based program. Why don't you tell us about what you're doing, and we'll hope that Dave comes back shortly.
Hey everyone, so happy to be here. I don't know how I got to be the lucky one to follow up the cat poop conversation, but I'll go for it. So my name's Carter Haney. I'm a biologist by training, and we started an organization to fix large-scale environmental restoration projects. So what we do is seagrass, mangrove, coral, and oysters, and we are essentially the blue collar of the blue economy. I grew up in Central Florida. We had 100 lakes within city limits. Growing up, I could see all these lakes getting developed, going from natural areas to developed with houses all around them. And I could see firsthand how development, how bad management practices impacts our natural communities. And so I got a window into that world and just transformed some of those principles and ideals into the marine and coastal system. So next slide, please. So here's what we look at. We look at the three big ones of how to figure out what is a good sustainable project. Is one, it needs to generate biologic lift. It needs to be economically sustainable, and it needs to be a net benefit to the local communities. We were fortunate enough to work on a project for the Safe Crystal River organization, and they had an issue with a hurricane came in and destroyed their coastal bay. Once that bay was destroyed, it got plagued with algae. Their economy went down. They had overwintering population of manatees that would go in there, and they stopped coming. So with $40 million of active restoration, we dredged, we maintained, we planted, and worked the Kings Bay project like a farmer would work a field. And it was incredible, the results that happened. We had the project generated 5x back to the local economy, whether that's through tourism, heads and beds, real estate values. It increased the biodiversity by 3x the biodiversity in the area. And it increased the water quality. Water quality was 3 feet before the restoration project. It was 33 feet after the restoration project because the plants outcompeted the harmful algae blooms. And that's what we're trying to achieve is nature-based solutions. Mother Nature can take care of itself, but she can't fight with her arms tied behind her back. And so by just providing that little lift in the beginning, it really makes a big difference. So some of the nature-based solutions that can be employed are environmental dredging, seagrass restoration. Seagrass restoration is incredibly fun and it's incredibly challenging because a lot of the impacts for seagrass restoration start uphill. It goes from the ridge to the reef. So water quality and nutrients and stakeholder participation are incredibly important. It's the basis of the food chain. Every turtle, duck, snail, manatee is coming out to eat your seagrass. And so just figuring out what that looks like, it's incredibly rewarding. And bivalve restoration for nutrient reduction, natural stormwater filtration are some of the techniques that we use below the water line. If you go to the next slide, above the water line, we try to replace historic oyster beds, plant mangroves and other living shorelines. And I'm not talking about just for recreational communities, I'm talking about large industry need these solutions. We planted 11 miles of living shoreline at inside a nuclear power plant discharge because they were having issues with erosion. The rest of the world is using nature-based solutions because they work, they're scalable. And we do a lot of wave attenuation devices. And I think this is the way the future is going to look, is figuring out how we are going to live in these coastal communities and adapt to changing climate, sea level rise, and increased frequency of major hurricanes and storms and typhoons. Next slide, please. So do natural infrastructure work? Yes. It's not some crazy harebrained idea. It's tangible. It's in so much in Florida, we are there's insurance reduction for homeowners insurance reduction for keeping mangroves behind your house. So these are some of the real world effects that we're seeing. Next slide, please. They're scalable. This this was a project we implemented for Martin County in Southeast Florida, where land is a premium. There's very few good options for stormwater. However, in this area is on one of the most biodiverse estuaries in the country, the Indian River Lagoon, and they were having a crisis. Manatees were starving to death for 2 years in a row. There wasn't enough seagrass because of poor water quality. And a lot of that was derived from stormwater nutrients. And so what did we do? We did a small project and planted less than 200 yards of seagrass in a stormwater conveyance. And those seagrasses pulled out all the sediments, reduced the nutrients, gave oxygen back into the water column, and it had better results than a adjacent $5 million stormwater treatment facility. So yeah, nature-based solutions work. That project won the #1 stormwater project in the state of Florida 2 years ago, or last year, excuse me. It works. So next slide, please. So here's what I think of as the sustainability cycle. The sustainability cycle is nature-based solutions that creates real jobs, creates real economic return through just a myriad of ways, including water quality, biodiversity. It just generates such a benefit into these local communities. And when we think about restoration of the world's ocean, 70% of our planet, it's a huge issue. But we have to think local, we have to act local, and our local solutions have to be scalable. And I just really appreciate, and I'm always inspired when I get to present on some of the work that we're doing and hear about work that others are doing too. So this is just as much fun for me as anything. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Carter. Dave, can you hear us now?
I can. Thank you.
Hey, good. Okay, we're live with Dave. Dave, you are the managing director of the Blue Community Consortium, and I'd love to hear the story. I'll be running the slides for you as you tell it.
Great. Thank you. So happy World Ocean Day to everyone. World Ocean Day has been special to me. I actually got to participate in the very first World Ocean Day event, which was held at Flamingo Park in Rio de Janeiro, the largest community seaside park in the world. And people like Jacques Cousteau were president. It was all part of the Earth Summit. And even though it was part of this big UN event, it never became a UN day until 2008. And I was involved with the help of Philippe Cousteau and Ed Begley Jr. and Noel Brown and Kristen Hoffman, who wrote a special song for the oceans for the event, to create an event for the United Nations that would lead to it becoming a UN day, which it did the next year. That involved, of course, some diplomatic negotiation, but we did that with Russians and US diplomats, and there was an important rum running component to it, but that's a whole nother story. Next slide, please. The Blue Community Consortium has 47 members. We include local cities, we have NGOs, we have businesses, and we have academia. And we are trying to find ways to create cultures to better protect our coast with coastal resiliency and restoration. Next slide, please. At that first Ocean Day, Jacques Cousteau said something that has stuck with me all these years, that people protect that which they love. And so if we can create a culture where people are loving the earth, loving the oceans, loving our coastlines and marine habitats, we can then do that. So we've utilized a proven cultural change methodology that has been used for over 50 years and applied to over 2,000 applications around the world that includes these components. Next slide, please. And we're going to pilot that starting this fall in the city of Key West, which is the capital of that tiny island nation of the Conch Republic. And we've created a brand new app to gather performance data for each of the 12 blue community strategies we use, the GSTC criteria, the One Planet Living principles, and all tied to the science of the 9 planetary boundaries. We also have cultural norm and support indicators to get a baseline for the cultural data that they can then set reasonable goals and objectives. Next slide, please. From there, we have an experiential opportunity where they create a shared vision experience, future exercises, and we actually have adopted the NASA Future Team process that we use for futuring as well. Next slide, please. There we do the implementation through individual support, task force, culture-based leadership development program for which we won an Olympic award that we developed with the UN Environment Program. And we've created a brand new certificate program with the UCF Rosen College of Hospitality Management. Next slide, please. And the key components of that certificate program are to give people a foundation of principles and approaches for leveraging tourism, one of the largest industries in the world, to have this coastal resiliency and restoration. We've collected a number of best practices and benchmarks for excellence and planning and implementation for sustainable tourism. Using the Blue Community app, we manage change to transform tourism communities. And then we have that culture-based leadership development piece. Next slide, please. And the last phase is measuring the results. We measure in performance, things like how much CO2, water, waste, landfill we've reduced, a programmatic number of people participating and their satisfaction levels. But we also measure the culture. Are the norms and support in the community changing with that cultural change? And then how do we strategize renewal to keep this effort going? And how do we extend it to those people and groups that have not yet participated? Next slide, please. So that's a real quick summary. Our consortium has many, many programs besides this one. One I'll just mention is a circular economy model, which we're actually doing rather than just talking about it through the Child's Hospitality Group. But I'll stop here and next slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. And finally, before we begin the conversation, we have Chris Oakes. He's the CEO of ReefGen. ReefGen is restoring coral. Tell us more.
Coral, seagrass, you name it. We are focused on mechanizing restoration efforts around the world in the coastal environment. And so what you can see on the screen is one of our grasshopper systems. I'm the CEO. I'm a marine scientist by training. I've done coral restoration, seagrass restoration, and the scale of the problem globally is significant. Next slide, please. So if we think about restoration and the work that Carter's doing and what's happening all over the world, almost all coastal restoration projects are done manually. This means divers are going in the water and drilling into dead coral reefs and plugging live coral into the reef, or planting seagrass with our fingers, or planting seagrass seeds with a little caulking gun. And the scale of the problem is in the millions of hectares, right? We've lost 5 million hectares of seagrass globally. We're on track to lose 90% of our coral reefs by 2050. We're losing 110,000 hectares of coral reef every year, right? It's crazy. And so if we think about what it's going to take to solve this problem, to regenerate these ecosystems, we have to be thinking in a different way. It's costly, it's slow, it's difficult to do this manually. And so what ReefGen is focused on is, next slide please, is making marine tractors. On land, there were 3 things that had to happen before tractors were really adopted. First, tractors had to become lighter weight, easier to use, more versatile, and that happened. Then tractors themselves had to be cost competitive with the price of labor at the time. And so after World War II, labor costs went up and tractors became more more relevant to farmers. And then to feed the global population as it grew, farms got larger. And so when these three trajectories converged, adoption of tractor technology became widespread. And so, next slide, please. So ReefGen is focused on making marine tractors, right? We're doing everything by hand in the nearshore environment. We want to mechanize that. And so we've developed, and there's two over over my shoulder here. We've developed lightweight, versatile, cost-effective marine tractors. We built the first system in the world, it's up there, that mechanized coral planting. We have a couple of seagrass grasshoppers that plant seagrass seeds and shoots. And we're expanding into other areas of restoration and project development, including site prep. So we've learned about a lot of the problems with purple urchins and things like that. That people are going out and collecting purple urchins by hand, right? We need to think about the scale of the problem in a different way. We need to mechanize the solutions, and that's what ReefGen's all about. Next slide, please. A couple of other points on seagrass. We've really focused our efforts on seagrass. Seagrass is a huge, there's a huge opportunity with seagrass as it relates to carbon. This is a slide from a McKinsey report where if we went out and restored all the seagrass in the world, and the US has huge potential, Florida is like one of the best places to do it. We're talking about a gigaton or 4 gigaton solution, right? We've lost 30 to 40% of our seagrasses. If we went and put that back, we'd be able to pull out 4 gigatons of carbon, right? We're releasing 40 gigatons a year roughly. So that's like 10% of the carbon problem right there, just with seagrass. So it's a huge opportunity that we should all be talking about. It's not, we want to feed the manatees, that's important, but it's also pulling out the nutrients from the water. We reduce red tides, we increase the fisheries, right? Seagrasses are the nursery habitat to 30% of our commercial fisheries. So if you like salmon, if you like tuna, we need to restore our seagrasses. It's also very hard to have a healthy coral reef without a seagrass meadow. The fish that start in the mangroves, they go to the seagrasses, then they go to the coral reefs. These ecosystems all are connected. And so ReefGen is focused on mechanizing the restoration technology to be able to go out and restore our nearshore habitats at a global scale. I'll get into some of the other numbers. Next slide, please. But it's all about how do we plant faster? How do we reduce the cost so that we can do more restoration? So more municipalities, more local communities can afford to do the coastal restoration that we have to have around the world. And so I'm building a company that is focused on capacity building. So we want to train users to use the tractors to restore the habitat. We want to effectively farm the ocean. We want to improve the efficiency of deploying nature-based solutions. And for the people who pay for this, insuring scuba divers is very expensive. Getting divers out of the water is an important thing. The Navy, the US Marine Army Corps of Engineers, everyone wants to get divers out of the water. We're doing that with our marine tractors. So next slide. Love to talk to anyone out in the audience about scaling this technology, and let's have this conversation.
Thank you, Christopher. So what I hear is that we have the opportunity to rebuild the environment through what looks a lot like the construction and farming industries that we're concerned we're losing already. So this is the question I have is how is the blue economy like the green revolution of the 1960s, and how is it not like that revolution? What are we going to do right this time that will not lead to some of the unintended consequences of the green revolution? I'll start with Dave.
Well, in terms of the blue economy, what Chris was saying, with the carbon aspect alone, seagrass is restoring and sequestering carbon at a rate of 30 times more than a tropical forest. And it also is the habitat for 70% of all sea life. So if you just think of the economic value of that alone, that's incredible. One of the things we're doing is we're doing research with a $5 million grant from the state and the federal government to put clams and seagrass together. And this way we're promoting an economy where clam farmers can have some credits for this kind of restoration, as well as the clams that they do for the commercial restaurant aspect as well. Those clam shells that are harvested then can be brought back for recycling and so forth. So there's all kinds of ways we're doing that.
So unlike the tilling and leaving behind or taking the nutrient out and not putting them back, this is a circular economy that we can build this time around.
Absolutely.
Chris, your thoughts?
Yeah, I would chime in and note that the Green Revolution was all about scale and mechanizing farming, right, with tractors and other technologies. But we created a lot of monocultures, right? A lot of corn, a lot of soy. And what Carter's doing, what Dave's talking about, what we're focused on is multi-trophic restoration, right? It's not just seagrass, right? It's seagrass plus clams, plus oysters, plus everything else, right? It's all related. And so if we're going to have a successful blue revolution, it has to be, I hate to use the cliche term, it has to be holistic. We have to be thinking about the interconnection of these ecosystems and not just planting one single thing. So that would be one of the big differences.
Carter, when we were talking before this event, you shared how many jobs are being created and the broad range of experience that you can bring to a job restoring a coastal environment. Talk a little about what happened in Crystal River and the kinds of work that's been created.
Yeah, it's awesome, and I think that's what this is all about. And a sustainable economy is increasing your tax base. So a lot of people make the mistake thinking that the jobs that are created are just for marine biologists, or it's not true. It's not true at all. So I think the jobs of the future for the blue economy, they're welders. We have 4 welders on staff. I'm a seagrass farmer. We have 26 commercial divers on staff. We have heavy equipment operators. We have technologists. We have geologists. We have water quality experts on staff. This is literally the blue economy, or the blue collar of the blue economy. We hire captains. A lot of the restorative aquaculture that we're currently doing, we have taking those applied principles from farming, right? Like you think about a farmer that put on their overalls. We don't put on overalls, we put on wetsuits. And it's a lot of the same principles. We're talking about longshoremen, stevedores. It's just a multidisciplinary approach, because we're working under the water and we're affected by all these different things, whether it's water quality, sediment, hydrology, storm impacts, all these different factors combined in the water, where it's unique from upland.
Another component of the economic opportunity is the tourism that is created when you restore these environments. How does the restorative economy coexist with the experience-oriented economy that we're going to be driving toward to create more prosperity in all these communities? And tourism and kelp farming and seagrass farming and coral restoration coexist.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And so one of the great things about hiring local is those local people that you hire, they generate that back into the economy. And so they know what's going on, whether that's the school kids or the workers. And after the project's done, then they have firsthand knowledge of the ability to articulate the benefits of the project. They become tour guides, kayak rentals, and that's just the people that are working with the restoration project. The ancillary is all these hotels get built up, and the restaurants are full. Well, now that you have increased tourism, a lot of times there's impact back into the restoration project. And so those hotels, those people are making a living off of the restoration project, start putting money back into the restoration, which further perpetuates the cycle. And pretty soon you got a pretty well-oiled machine that's creating jobs, creating habitat, increasing biodiversity, creating more jobs, and the circle goes on.
Cycles, as you said, Dave.
Although I would argue that globally that is not happening. I think locally it's happening, but this is the problem. Globally, hotels are not funding restoration of the habitats that they are providing to their guests. They are assuming that it is going to just be there. So until we change that, as consumers, as tourists, until we demand that when we go to these places, that these hotels that are capitalizing on the nature-based solutions that are right there, we're not going to see massive restoration around the world, right? And so Carter just characterized exactly what should be happening, what there should and is. And I think for the audience, we need to demand that when we go on vacation, that the hotels are actually putting something back, right? It could start there. There are some real challenges with following the money here, but Carter also characterized it was spend a buck, make 50 bucks, right?
Yeah.
When it was $40 million went into a $2 billion outcome, right? That's 1 to 50, and yet it's not happening at the scale that it should be.
Yeah, tourism is responsible for 10.5% of the world's GDP and employs 12.5% of the world's workforce. And there are really good models of this happening. Carter and I and Doug all went to the Small Island Developing States Conference in Antigua Barbuda, and the hotel we stayed in had a mangrove restoration project is on the property as part of their hotel. And I asked how they got into that. They said, if we don't have a quality environment, we don't have tourism. So people are getting that. Disney is a great example, and they are taking this not just to their own properties, but they have conservation projects now in 114 countries around the world. And they're building, sustainability models for these island states. So we're hoping to take the pilot in Key West that I mentioned to these small island developing states to further that restoration effort.
This is a fascinating conversation, but we need to move on. And I want to thank each of you for your contribution today. It's been an amazing discussion.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So we will move on now to a question. How can each of us participate through our own investing to support this? And we are joined by Brian Fairhurst. He's with New Day Impact Investing. He's Director of Business Development there. Brian, the Ahoy ETF, Exchange Traded Fund, is New Day's curated approach to creating an ocean health positive investment portfolio opportunity. Tell us about it.
I almost always chuckle when I see the ticker. It just it proves we can have a little fun with our finances. But at its core, Ahoy is a global go anywhere stock portfolio that's comprised of companies making a positive impact on ocean health. It's really a purpose-built, impact-first portfolio. And by default, it's really a disruptor to the traditional portfolio construction techniques in the investment industry.
Now, how does Ahoy directly address our topic today, which is coastal restoration? Can you share a couple of examples?
Certainly. So at its core, Ahoy is designed around a set of key performance indicators tied to specific ocean health outcomes. And by building the portfolio from the bottom up, tied to those 5 key themes, we're driving capital towards companies who are having material positive impacts on the ocean through a core aspect of their business, not an aside, not a feel-good project they do on top of their profitable business in order to get positive PR and curry favor with environmentalists. So the 5 themes that we've developed with these KPIs are water quality and technology, sustainable fishing, clean energy, environmental engineering and rehabilitation, and responsible retailing of consumer products. If we have time, I'd like to highlight 3 portfolio holdings out of the 25 stocks in the portfolio today. So I'd highlight Acciona out of Spain, Jacobs Solutions here in the US out of Dallas, Texas, and Stantec, which is up in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. So Acciona is at its core business a utility provider, but they're all about renewable energy coming through their grid. So think wind farms, other sustainable forms of energy, as well as water projects, water desalination, water cleanup, water quality, water drinking stations. But they've really orchestrated themselves around a corporate ethos for business as unusual. So everything they do is focused on coastal restoration, rehabilitation of ecosystems, including riverine ecosystems. right? The rivers all feed into the oceans. So what we flow into those oceans in terms of sediment, agricultural runoff, fertilizers, pollutants, industrial contaminants, those are all areas they're focused on to help drive positive outcomes relative to ocean health. What Jacobs Solutions is doing down in Dallas, they are an environmental, scientific, and technical consulting firm. They've got ongoing contracts here in the US, globally as well. But within the US, they're tied with NOAA, the Nature Conservancy, and even the Department of Defense. And this hits close to home to me as an Air Force veteran. Two of the projects they've done with the Nature Conservancy in a place on the Panhandle, the Emerald Coast, where I used to live in my youth, is designed around oyster bed restoration. So around Tyndall Air Force Base near Panama City, this is designed around coastal resilience to help shelter, as really a national defense issue, the base and the hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of aircraft from storm surges, from wave action, right? But by restoring ocean ecosystems like oyster beds, not only do you create climate resiliency, you restore habitats for fish. The oysters themselves are amazing filter feeders and improve water quality. So there's a number of things they're doing there. They've done the same thing at Pensacola Bay for 6.5 miles of some of the most productive, crucial oyster beds in Pensacola Bay. And again, it's around creating these restorative ecosystems to bring back marine, aquatic nurseries, all of the things that we need to have thriving ecosystems. And frankly, it drives a lot of the blue collar economic interests that were talked about by some of my colleagues earlier. So these are crucial aspects.
So how does Ahoy is your first curated ETF, and why ocean health first? And what are the criteria you use when making decisions about what goes into the portfolio?
Great question. You're right. It's the start in terms of offering a very differentiated investment strategy that's consistent with our goal. We want to democratize access to high quality institutional caliber portfolios that put impact first, with very tangible, specific outcomes on impact, non-financial goals, without sacrificing those financial goals around return, risk management, and long-term asset growth. So ocean health, I think why the ocean has been well covered by my esteemed colleagues today, but I would reiterate what's been said before, that we are well beyond sustainability for the oceans, right? We're talking about deep need for regeneration and restoration of marine species in crucial environments. We need to build resilience into oceanic global systems, because at the end of the day, ocean health is human health, right? We're inextricably linked from the coast and the ocean for all the reasons that have been described: carbon sink, oxygen production, food production, economic vibrance for a major part of the globe. So this one felt like a big meaty topic to hit right out of the gate, and we're going to offer additional sleeves around follow-on impact goals as we evolve as a platform.
Well, Brian, I want to thank you for taking a few minutes to explain everything you're doing with Ahoy. I want to bring Doug back in as well. Thank you, Brian. We'll see you again soon. So, Doug, another one of these conversations that leaves me thinking and kind of reeling at both what we've done to ourselves and our planet and the opportunities that we face going forward. What are you reflecting on as we think about the conversation today?
There's a lot to be said here, Mitch, of course. And I think one of the things that's on my mind today and has always been on my mind, which is fundamentally why we created New Day, is how we bridge this chasm between information, awareness, education, and action. And it's why we do these events. And there's a lot of really, really important work that we're trying to do as an organization, and we have shared what is this philosophy around engagement relative to our climate action work. And that is that the paradox today is that people who are really living at the forefront of not just climate impact, but sustainability and ocean health, at least in their own minds, are rarely the people who have contributed much to climate change through their small carbon footprints. But climate change and addressing ocean health has become the defining symbol of humans' collective relationship with the environment, and one that today every one of us has a responsibility to address. So, over the course of the last 6-7 years, as we've been building our organization, We've all had opportunities to go out and do beach cleanup events and participate in marches and things like that, but it's got to be more than that. And I remember participating in these events and really starting to get anxious about what I tell my own kids about what I did today as an advocate. You know, it's important to participate in marches and beach cleanup events and things like that, but we need to be doing more than that. It's about giving our children this big tent view of the world and empowering them to make better choices and decisions as citizens. You know, we're here to talk about the future and to empower a generation of younger people to be the future leaders of tomorrow so that they, in their work, can bring about better solutions here. So, you know, we do a lot of important work at the New Day organization. And as a small team, it begs the importance of this collaborative type of mindset, which is why we have all of these distinctive partners on the call today that we're taking action with. My big ask, my appeal today is for everybody that's on this call to activate. There has to be more that we're all doing in our daily lives to address these problems.
You know, a few weeks ago, we spent an evening with Jane Goodall, and it was inspiring. She is one of the early leaders of this movement. She said something that I think we all can take to heart and all act on, which is to understand where the things we buy and use come from, how you can use them and dispose of them responsibly, and what happens to them once you dispose of them. And if that isn't circular, that's a bad thing. But if you don't know where something came from and how it's going to be disposed of, you haven't really engaged in your role in the circular economy, nor the ecosystem in which you live. And I think that's, for me, for any listener, thinking about what you can do right now is look at whatever you have in your hand and figure out where it came from and where it's going to go. And if we can do that, we can start to make the kinds of changes, backing these kinds of projects that we've talked about today, investing our money to get the right outcomes in the society that we're looking for. And it's been a pleasure to be with you again, Doug.
Likewise, Mitch. Thank you.
Folks, take a moment, think about your life, think about your impact, and let's all make a change. Thank you for your attention today, and happy World Oceans Day.